Hey guys, how's it going? This has been a long time in the making. Here I have three of the best 16-inch gaming laptops. The only thing that's missing is the GE68, and that's not done purposely. I wish I was able to get my hands on one, but I'm just not able to at this moment in time. And I also don't have the X16. That's something I do hope to get soon. So I think at some point, maybe whoever the winner is of this, I'll end up comparing that one to maybe the GE78 next, and then the X16. So we'll just have to settle for these three, and eventually I'll probably just do a standalone video for the GE68. But anyway, guys, let's just get right into it. I'm gonna cover as much as I can on these three laptops. I'm not gonna be able to cover everything, so just leave me a comment and I'll try to get back to you. And on top of that, this is the type of video that doesn't always do well on YouTube. The algorithm has a hard time finding the right audience. Hit that like button so YouTube knows to recommend this video to more people just like you. Anyway, let's just get right into it. We're gonna first talk about the chargers. Two of them for Lenovo. Let's just start with the Lenovo first. If you get an RTX 4070 or an RTX 4060, you're gonna get this 300 watt charger, which I've been using for a long time, and it's fine. It's nice and slim. But if you upgrade to the 4080 version, you get this brand new 330 watt charger. And as you can see, it is significantly smaller. This is what it looks like next to the ROG 330 watt charger. And as you can see, the 300 watt charger is a decent amount smaller overall. And then if we wanted to compare it to the Razer, this is the Razer's 330 watt charger, and it's actually the smallest of the bunch, but not by much. I mean, so out of the Scar 16's charger, the Razer Blade 16's charger, the Legion 7, 8 Pro's charger, who gets a check mark? Well, it's going to go to the Razer Blade, and then it's going to go to the Legion, and then in last place, it's going to go to the ROG. Even though this is a newer 330 watt charger that they introduced last year with the Scar 17 SE, it already can't compete with these much smaller guys. Okay, so let's do the ports. On the Scar, you're only getting two USB Type A ports, and this is my first issue with the Scar. The only USB Type A ports are on the right-hand side, and I find that to be a little bit annoying because my mouse still uses USB Type A, so it kind of gets in the way of my mouse hand. And plus, if you're going to have two USB Type A ports, I kind of wish they were on different sides. And same with the other side. On the Scar, you're getting USB Type-C ports, two of them. One is Thunderbolt, one supports DisplayPort. But the problem is, I kind of wish they would flip-flop them, have like one USB Type-A on one side and one USB Type-C on the other side. But that's just the way they did things. And also the Scar, this is where you're getting your HDMI 2.1, your Ethernet port, and the charging port. On the Razer, you're getting your headphone jack on the left. I tend to prefer my headphone jack on the left. I just find that most of my headphones have the cable on the left instead of the right, but whatever, not a big deal. One thing I forgot to mention on the charging section is the actual connector itself for the Razer is made out of metal. So it's really, really easy to scratch this charging port. And as you can see, you get a sense of the ventilation on both the left and the right. Both the Blade and Lenovo have it coming out through the sides, while on the Razer, it's only on the back. Only the Legion has ports on the back. So you're getting your charging port, two more USB Type-A's, an HDMI 2.1, a USB Type-C, and your Ethernet connector. And on the Razer Blade, all of your ventilation is on the back, and with the Scar, you're only getting ventilation at the back. So when it comes to the ports, who gets to win? For me, I'm gonna say the Legion. You get a lot of USB Type A ports. You have the option of having ports on the back. One thing I forgot to mention is that they are labeled, so it makes it a lot easier to plug in without having to get up and kind of reach around it. Adds a little bit of extra convenience. I missed last year's version that was actually illuminated. This isn't, but whatever, it is what it is. And second place, probably going to go to the Razer because they have a good amount of ports and they include an SD card slot. And in third place, it's going to go to the Scar. They have the fewest ports and I don't like how they're arranged. Okay, so now let's talk about the size. To no surprise, the Scar 16 is in last place. It's just the largest. So actually in terms of overall width and length, the Razer is in first place here because of how compact it is. So as you can see, I have them all stacked up here, and the Razer is still the smallest. And in terms of thickness, the Scar is definitely a lot thicker. So who gets a check mark? Obviously it's Razer. They're both rated to perform the same way in terms of TGP. So let's talk about the overall build quality. The Razer is obviously going to get the win here. It's the only one that's made completely out of metal. So it's the same aluminum throughout on the lid, on the back, when you open it up, on the keyboard deck, even the bezels are made out of aluminum. And the trackpad is gigantic in glass. The keycaps feel like they're made out of a very high quality. This is an easy win for the Razer. In terms of the hinge, it's again the best. It's really easy to open with one hand. It doesn't require much force, but it's tuned just perfectly where it feels really, really easy to open and close. There is a little bit of wobble, but it's nothing you'll ever notice unless you're doing something silly like this right here. So now when it comes to the Legion, which I'm gonna put in second place, the hinge is actually really solid too. There's actually not really any of that weird wobble that I saw with the Razer, but the hinge is stiffer. And one cool thing about the Legion is the hinge goes all the way back. But in terms of build, let me just try to stay in order here. You're getting a really good aluminum on the top cover and on the back. But everything else is made out of plastic. This side bit is made out of plastic. This little covering over the ventilation is made out of plastic. The back is made out of plastic. This is all made out of plastic. And when you open up the keyboard deck, it is made out of plastic as well. And it doesn't really feel very premium. Unfortunately, the keyboard deck feels a little bit mid-range to me. I mean, there's no flex. It's built really well, but this build of plastic just doesn't really feel super high quality. The keycaps feel really nice, though. They almost feel like they're a little bit grippy in a sense. Still plastic, but overall, fairly nice. And then here we have the Scar 16. This is a really, really high quality aluminum in the front, but everything else is plastic. And this armor, I forgot what it's called exactly, but it's removable. If you care about that, you can 3D print it. It comes with a few in the box, but everything here is made out of plastic, including the back. And as you can see, it's translucent. The side here is made out of plastic. The back is made out of plastic, but it's textured and I guess helps with the build. And one thing I like about the Scar is you're getting a lot of rubber feet. So if you keep this on your lap, it's nicely planted and it doesn't slide around at all. It sits firmly on your lap. I have found that with the Legion and with the Blade that it does kind of slide a little bit, but nothing really worth noticing unless you have all three of them in front of you the way I do here. And then when you open it up, the hinge also really, really solid, really, really firm. And you have plastic here. I don't mind the plastic on the Scar, maybe because of the translucent nature. It does look a little bit cool, but it just feels more solid. It kind of feels like a smoother acrylic type of plastic versus on the Legion, where it just feels a little bit more cheap. So overall, obviously, first place goes to the Razer. Second place, I'm going to give it to the Scar. And then in third place, I'm going to give it to the Legion. And in terms of actual design, this obviously is very subjective. I want to give it to the Scar. I really, really like the way this looks. I really like the RGB on the back and in the front. I like the way the keyboard illuminates. I like the translucent nature. Obviously, it's not for every situation. I can imagine if you're seeing clients and you want to look professional, the Razer might be the best for you. Like in my day job, I'm an accountant, and say I'm opening my own firm or I'm trying to give somebody financial advice. The last thing I want to do is show up here with this ROG laptop, pop it open, and have all these RGB coming out of it. It just kind of would seem like a client would not want to give me a big down payment to start a project with this laptop. Versus, I feel like you could get away with that with both the Legion and the Razer. But for me, I like the way the Scar looks, so I'm gonna give it to the Scar. So now let's talk keyboard. Third place for me is gonna be the Razer. It's really, really shallow. It's a little bit mushy. It requires some actuation force, but not much. But the shorter travel and the lack of a number pad really, really affected for me. It's not bad, and I've lived with Razer Blade laptops for years, and I'm able to get through the day with it. But with better competition out there, I would definitely prefer the Scar. I miss the days when they had optomechanical keyboard. It was one of my favorite keyboards to use. I don't know why they dropped it, but this keyboard is fine. It still feels a little bit mushy. I mean, I wish there was a little bit more actuation force necessary to press it down, but at least there's more travel. It's a fine keyboard for what it is, and it's actually the quietest out of all of them. And one thing about the Scar is this little number pad right here, which there we go. See, it doesn't always work properly. Probably just because it's capacitive and you're not getting any feedback when you actually make a click. But it works when it needs to, and it's fine for what it is. And yes, I actually do find myself using this. And in first place, we have the Legion. This is by far my favorite keyboard to use of any laptop, not just gaming laptop. I don't like the MacBook laptop because I have the same issue that I have with the Blade. And out of all the several other laptops I've used, but my number one has always been this guy, the Legion. You get a proper number pad, and the numbers are right where they should be. The 0 actually takes up 2 slots in the keys, so when you're using your thumb, you could actually hit it properly. A lot of times, they put the 0 towards the right, and it's not natural for your thumb to hit that. And these sides up here are where they should be on any other keyboard. Like, for example, this is a Samsung laptop. Really, really nice laptop. It's super thin, really nice. I'm actually thinking about doing a review on it soon. But what I wanted to point out was the minus sign, the plus sign, and then the division sign and the multiplication sign aren't where they should be. This is the correct layout, and this is where my muscle memory is tuned to, and this is where everyone's muscle memory is tuned to who live on a number pad. So the fact that they did this in many ways kind of makes it a little bit useless to me when I'm working or when I'm crunching a lot of numbers. I don't know, maybe because I'm in finance and I use the number pad a lot, but I'm probably spending too much time talking about the numpad. Let me move on. But coming back to the keyboard, it's really, really easy to type on. I do wish there was a little bit more force, but because the keycaps are a little bit bigger, I don't find myself hitting the wrong keys or anything like that like I do with other laptops. Everything's just wonderfully spaced. There is just enough travel. Everything just works really, really well with this keyboard. And this is by far my favorite keyboard. And the keyboard is obviously a very, very important component of a laptop. Okay, so let's talk trackpad. Since I have the Legion right in front of me, I'll discuss this one. It's fine. It's good for what it actually is. It's made out of plastic though, so it's not glass. It is really responsive and fast, and I like it. It's a bit small. I wish it was a little bit taller. When I'm scrolling around, I find myself hitting the edges a lot. I don't have that issue with this Razer because it is gigantic. It's probably the biggest trackpad I've seen in a Windows laptop. Maybe second to the Samsung trackpad, which I mentioned earlier, but we're not talking about Samsung today. But overall, this trackpad is really, really nice. The glass feels really nice and smooth. It's really easy to use. It feels very, very responsive. In third place, and by a very big margin, is this Scar 16. I've used the Scar 18 and the Strix 18. And I didn't have a problem with that. I felt those trackpads were really good. I don't know if it's because of this capacitive number pad, but it just does not feel as responsive. It's delayed when you use it, and it doesn't feel as smooth. I don't know if trackpads have like a polling rate the way a mouse does, but there is something that's definitely missing from this trackpad to make it feel as a premium laptop should. I mean, if you only have one of these laptops and you're using this trackpad, like, I don't think you're going to return it over it. I don't even think you'll even notice it. But because I have all three of these right next to each other, it's definitely apparent. All right, guys, so next is the speakers. Overall, I want to say that the Razer is the best. It's missing the bass that's present in the Razer Blade 18, but the sense of mids and clarity is a notch better than the Scar 16 and the Legion 7 Pro. I feel like most people who listen to them might prefer the Legion because you're hearing a bit more of that lower rumble, but to my ears, I prefer the extra sense of clarity. I'm okay with sacrificing a little bit of artificial sounding bass to get better overall clarity. And the sense of soundstage is way better on the Razer, where it sounds like where sounds are coming from all over the place. It doesn't sound like they're just contained. And the fact, and I think the fact that they're front firing probably does help with the clarity. But overall, yep, Razer is number one. Number two is Legion, which sounds really, really, really good, really well balanced. And I can imagine that a lot of people might listen. It's going to be a close second for the Legion. And in third place is the Scar 16. I think the speakers are a bit of a step down compared to last year's Scar 15, and definitely worse in comparison to the Scar 18, which I had in recently. So the Scar is going to take the L. But overall, for gaming laptops, and actually overall laptop speakers in general, they're all fairly good. Okay, so now let's talk noise levels. They're all loud. I'm going to show up like the decibels that I've been able to get from all of them. They're all within like the 50, 55, 56-ish decibels, depending on how far away my testing equipment is. But like the decibels aren't everything, I'm starting to realize. They all sound differently. Like to my ears, the Scar sounds the most annoying. Something about the way that all four of those fans are spitting definitely, for whatever reason, sounds louder. The Legion is the quietest. The fans that they're using in the new vapor chamber, especially in the 4080 version and up, I'm starting to think that vapor chambers are just a bit more quieter while they're also able to dissipate the heat pretty decently. Okay, and next, and probably one of the most important thing, at least to me, is the display. That's where your eyes are looking at. Frames don't matter if they look like crap. The Lenovo Legion gets an L here because they're using a traditional IPS screen with only sRGB. You're getting a low color gamut when it comes to DCI-P3. So even though they have HDR on the Legion, it's not real HDR. You're not getting any kind of local dimming, and the color volume isn't high enough to display HDR properly. So that HDR is just a check mark for them. And the contrast, as good as it is for being a traditional IPS display, it can't hold a candle with both the Scar and the Razer. So the rest of the display section is going to be between the Razer and the Scar. And I will have to give the edge to the Razer. That 4K screen looks amazing. And if you're wondering if you can tell the difference in resolution between 4K and QHD, even at 16 inches, you can. It is noticeable. Videos and games do look sharper. I can't deny that. But on top of that, the utilization of the mini LED is far superior than Scar. It either seems like it has more dimming zones or it's just better controlled. I can still see some blooming on the Scar. And the overall color just looks a lot more vibrant, and it's a lot more pleasing to look at. And even if you're just looking at the measurements, the Razer is able to get pretty much OLED levels in terms of contrast compared to the Scar, which is still really, really high. I mean, I think 1500 to 1 and up is high, and then the Scar is getting way more than that. But the mini LED is on a whole different ball game. There are some times where you do see some blooming in the Razer Blade 16, and I pointed that out in my review when I showed the fireworks scene. You can see some blooming. But on the Scar 16, I'm seeing a lot more blooming, and it just seems like the Scar makes some interesting decisions about how to use the variable backlight technology that mini LED has to offer, where I feel it might be necessary sometimes to turn it off if you're using color critical work. With the Razer, not so much. I find that the mini LED display is a lot better controlled, and when you look at them side by side, it's like kind of no competition. Unfortunately, the Razer does look a lot better than the Scar. Alright guys, so let's look at performance. So I'm going to go through this really quickly because I feel like this part kind of usually drags on. Let's start off with time spy. Overall, the Blade 16 is going to win because it has a 4090. That's expected, but let's break it down. Let's start off with the CPU score. The Razer is in last place by a decent margin, and that's because the CPU can't keep cool long enough to run through this benchmark. So in terms of CPU performance, you're going to get the least amount of performance from the Razer Blade because it is thermal throttling much faster than the Legion and the Scar. And look at the Legion, I'm getting chart-topping scores. This is just nuts. I don't know if the Legion has like a factory undervolt, but it is thermal throttling way later compared to the Scar 16. I mean, the Scar 16 is no slouch. The CPU score is getting 15,803, which is just about standard from what I've been seeing from all the other 13th generation Intel CPUs I've seen this year. So this is kind of tackling both the thermals and the actual CPU score. And as you can see, the Scar has the Core i9 13980, the Legion has the i9 13900, and the Razer Blade has a 13950. And honestly, I don't think it really matters. I don't think it matters between the different CPUs. I just think the thermals matter more in terms of actual raw performance. Overall, how much does this matter? Let's move on to a real game. Let's look at Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So let's start with 1080p. The Razer Blade is getting 194 frames per second, the Legion is getting 206 frames per second, and the Scar is getting 193. So that extra CPU performance is making a difference at 1080p. Let's look at 1440p, where the GPU starts to stretch its legs a little bit more. The Razer Blade 16 is going to be on top because it's a 4090. I'm assuming if you get a 4090 in either the Legion or the Scar, you're going to get similar performance, if not maybe a little bit better. But in my 4080, the Scar is losing to the Legion at 167 frames versus 163. That's very, very minimal. You're not going to be able to notice that in games. That could just be the silicon lottery. And at 4K, there's a 2-frame difference with the 4080 laptops, and with the Razer, you're getting 95 FPS. Again, because that's a 4090, so it will perform better. So now let's look at Horizon Zero Dawn. So let's start off with 1080p again. The Razer Blade is getting 147 frames per second versus the Legion is getting 145. And the Scar is winning in this run with 151. I can't explain to you why that is. That's 1080p at 1440p. They're all pretty much neck and neck. They're off by 1 frame each. And again, remember, this is a 4090 in that Razer Blade 16. So in Horizon Zero Dawn, you're not really seeing much of a difference. But at 4K, the Razer starts to take a lead again, once again, because of that 4090 versus the 82 FPS with the 4080 and the Legion, and 80 with the Scar. Difference of 2 frames between the two 4080 chips, not really a big deal. Alright, and finally Cyberpunk. Getting essentially very, very similar scores across the board. If you just look at 1080p, the Razer seems to be struggling there a bit. I ran this Razer benchmark a bit early on with an earlier driver, so that could be at play. I'm not exactly sure, but once you get to 1440p and then 4K, and even with the frame generation, I'm assuming drivers got better, because I would have expected the 4090 to perform a little bit better. I would say overall, though, you're getting about similar FPS. Overall, in terms of thermals, the Razer gets the L here. It seems like the Legion wins in terms of CPU, but the Scar seems to win in GPU when it comes to thermals. I'm usually getting a higher TGP out of the Scar versus the Legion, but at the end of the day, when you're looking at actual gameplay, it's not really making a difference. So the last thing I want to talk about is support. This is very, very important. Razer has a terrible reputation when it comes to support. You can go all over Reddit, all over any type of social media about people complaining about terrible experiences they've had with Razer. I'm not going to say it's great or bad. I haven't had a lot of these experiences. I've used Razer a decent amount to where I've had to send my laptops in, and I was able to get them back within a week or two. Now, once you talk to the right person, that is, the problem with Razer is their communication platform to support. It's terrible. Honestly, and I don't find the Asus is that much better. I've had issues with some of my ROG laptops, and it's just been a pain to find the right person. And when I finally do, I mean, I typically just have to send it back. But Asus products, it seems like it's getting better, are usually back ordered. So if I send something in, who knows when I'll even get it back. Lenovo is the best. I mean, and you have a lot of options. They're just a regular. So if something goes wrong with your Lenovo within like the first 30 days, they'll send you a replacement, and you don't even have to send back your other one. They'll send you a label separately, and anytime after that, they can have somebody come to your house to fix your issues. And, that's something that could be potentially very, very important to you. Lenovo and Dell are the best. I mean, they're by far much larger companies, so they can allocate a lot more resources towards support. I can anticipate that as both Razer and Asus grow, that'll start to improve. Obviously, price is a factor. The Razer is in last place for that, but you are getting more with the Razer, especially in terms of the build quality. The Legion seems appropriately priced. The Scar seems very well priced for what it is. So final decisions. All rounder, Scar. Best overall in terms of premium and professional looking, and in terms of display. Razer in terms of keyboard and port selection, etc. You're getting it's the Legion. If I had to pick one, I would go for. I'd probably go for the Scar, just because it doesn't fail at anything. There's some things that I want better, but it actually doesn't fail at anything. And the screen is still really good. It's not at the Razer's level. But overall, I think the Scar is the right choice in terms of price, performance, build, and just overall package. All right, that's it. I'm done. Thanks, guys. Bye.